So uh, basically, I am Somenath Kundu. I previous to working as the senior cybersecurity officer and CISO for the Greater India region in Schneider Electric. I had been working in NTPC, one of the India's power major, for almost 20 years. And there I had been into a lot of fields, right from being a shift operation engineer to maintenance engineer, subsequently working in engineering, tendering negotiations, and then obviously in cybersecurity, where we got a lot of opportunities to do a lot of incidents and response, triage, and lot of stuffs. Anyway, so coming to the topic, so I come with a background of having a purview of both the asset owner as well as a product manufacturing security. So having two-pronged ideas with respect to the requirements of OT cybersecurity. And what I will try to do in this session is try to map, create a correlation, and try to create an image where things become much more clear and easy to absorb, so-called with respect to the cybersecurity, particularly with respect to these criterias and contents of 62443. So before that, let me just share my screen. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
So if we start, let's say, from the genesis of the topic. So earlier there was no demarcation like what is IT cybersecurity, what is OT cybersecurity, but then all of a sudden need was felt that let's deal with the topic of OT cybersecurity separately. Now, if we go into the real genesis of the topic and what 62443 says about it is a term called cyber physical systems. So how to deal with that means what happens in an IT environment is we talk about security, we build solutions upon those building blocks of security and convert it into a complete solution. But when you talk about OT, it's this not the same story. So here, what the ultimate aim or the target of the solution is to achieve a certain time. So we all know that, let's say, in a environment of industrial automation, we talk about operations in milliseconds, or somewhere in operations in microseconds. Like for example, the turbovisory controls that are being present in a let's say power generation scenario, the operation actually needs to happen in 2 milliseconds. That's the basic essence of whether the demand and the generations are in sync, whether my turbine will be thrown offload or will be derived on a heavy load, and there will be a chance of like turbine converting into a generator and so many of those difficult concepts. So uh, it's like in a flip of a millisecond, we can go from like a turbine is in super speed of 3000 rpm, but then if we miss the topic of the protections that are happening in milliseconds, then it can create a catastrophe. Coming from that background, what happened when people were talking about cybersecurity of the OT? Definitely, it took a back seat. Why it took a back seat is because they were all concerned about the purview of the time, the fulfilling of the time requirement. And based on that, what happened is that the 7 layers of the OSI model, people started thinking in a sense that whether we can really cut down on any of those 7 layers to fast forward the control, and in that manner, the protocols become faster. So if we talk about Modbus or DNP or BACnet, we see that mostly these OT protocols never call upon for all the 7 OSI layers. Why? Because again, it's all about time. So when we talk about time, then what happens is that other aspect that comes into picture is why we are talking about time. If we backtrace this one and see the genesis of it, we will find that we are talking about time because we want to make our automation all the time available. So the essence of the topic on which the OT or the automation was built, and so-called the definition of 62443 as ISCS, Industrial Automation and Control System, which not only talks about the ICS, which is Industrial Control System, but it also talks about a thing called automation, which is like a combination of human and automation environment together with the intelligence part into it, and definitely working towards the finer control, towards a targeted way of controlling an automation environment. So basically, again, coming back to the topic, the cyber physical systems, since they were given a target of completing certain operations in a certain time period, they never talked about the security. Rather, it was always about the operations target that are to be felt, that are to be met. And that is why there, from the genesis itself, the cybersecurity for the OT systems was a little bit like a thing which was little talked about or was taken less care of, and it required a lot of evolutions to happen on a later point of time. But by saying so, when the evolution started happening, then again there is a concept of like difference in opinion about how to build a cybersecurity of an OT vis-a-vis how to build a cybersecurity for IT. So we know the three tenets of cybersecurity is confidentiality, integrity, and availability, CIA. But the beautiful thing is that for OT cybersecurity, if we deal on these three tenets, it's not sufficient. Rather, the priority of these three tenets are also not the same as that for an IT cybersecurity. To say so, the idea is here just the opposite. For IT, it is CIA, whereas for OT, it's just the opposite, AIC, availability, then integrity, and finally the confidentiality. But that doesn't stop there for OT, because as I was discussing in the initial part of it, always when we start with the topic of OT, we actually try to do a successful automation environment. That is what is ISCS. And when we do a successful automation environment, we always talk about OSAS or operational health and safety. So for us, the OT cybersecurity formula is very simple: AIC plus operational health and safety. That's what it is. So when we try to build the cybersecurity for OT, we definitely need to consider these aspects of it. By the way, please excuse me if I take some sip of tea in between. Just bad, bad maybe, but I need it. So now, once we have understood what OT cybersecurity will be the building block on which it is, we have to now understand what is the cybersecurity concept with respect to the entire management or the context of the organizations, how we look into it. So we all know a very common topic called the BCP, business continuity plan, and obviously the cyber crisis and management plan getting aligned, the senior management doing a lot of due diligence and due care with respect to my business continuity, and building of lot of cross-functional teams to actually evolute and at the same time evaluate both, evolute and evaluate that topic of BCP. And it is a ever live topic, so every time it changes its concept. We all as IT people, I feel, are very aware of a concept called ISMS, that is straight coming from ISO 27001. So it's information security management system. What here in 62443 we talk about is yes, in 62443 what we talk about is a term called CSMS. cybersecurity management system. Yeah.
I repeat once again, please mute from your side. All of
Okay.
you except so. Yeah, you continue,
Yeah.
Sumat.
Yeah. So what is CSMS? CSMS is basically, you can say, a cyclic action path where we define certain kind of work ethics against three primary components, that is the assess phase, the develop and implement phase, and then the maintain phase. So if we see that we do some assessments, like I said, the BCP, and then we develop and implement something, we design and implement something, and then we try to maintain. And then again, during the process of maintenance, we find some lacuna or we find some obsolescence, and then again we do the assessment. So it's a continuous cyclic process. Now, the moment we talk about this cyclic process, that is where the asset owners has a very important role, so to say. So, I'm sorry, just a sec. Something happened. I don't know. Just give me a sec, please. Extremely sorry. Something happened. I don't know what. Is my screen visible once again?
Yes,
It is
Somnath.
visible, yes.
Yes. Sorry for that glitch.
Yes, it is.
So what happens is that now there are some primary roles for the asset owner, and if we talk about the asset owner's role, it is primarily governed by basically two components. One is 62443-1-1, which actually gives a brief glimpse about what the standard is, what are the components and models of the standard, this and that, etc., etc. And then obviously the 2-1, which solely talks about the asset owner's perspective. So if we talk about, like, say, the CSMS part, then what happens is in the CSMS part, we follow a very categorical method. So what happens is that once we have done the due diligence and due care, and the top management is now involved into the process, then what happens, the time comes for doing a deep dive, whether we have the required amount of policies, the procedures and the guidelines to actually create some kind of a framework based on which we will do the subsequent steps of this work. So basically we see that this is a kind of an umbrella concept for an asset owner, where there should always be, like, I mean to say is that some kind of live policies and procedures document, some guidelines which are ever evolving. And at the same point of time, the other party is like, we should have a capability where we, like, as asset owners, we can be in a position to do regular audits in a certain frequency, to actually scale and measure where we are as a complete solution, or in the totality of the larger context of this automation that we are planning, or that is there in the field. Now this cannot come in singularity. Okay, so the moment we talk about the policies and the procedures, then we will think about what are the long term, mid term, and the short term goals that we need to achieve with that. And obviously, as a CISO, I always believe in one stuff, is that we should be super, I mean to say, means super kind of affiliated, or like possessive about knowing the environment. So how it is, like, if we have, let's say, what happens is that if I have lot of food on the plate, or let's say I am in a buffet environment where there is a lot of food, you will see that we will not be able to gauge or assess anything, neither my own diet, neither the amount of food I need to satiate myself, neither which food to pick, which food not to pick. So there's the basic essence where it is like, as CISOs, we should be very kind of like nagging to know more and more about our system. And what evolves out of it is the term called asset identifications and asset monitoring. Now, Identifying the asset is a separate topic, and then monitoring the asset is a separate topic. Here I will call upon like I will call upon again and again uh, correlation or a mapping with our normal home, so that it becomes easy to understand the thing. Let's consider our home. So what happens in our home, you see that it's built over a certain dedicated area. We have lots of doors and windows both inside and outside the home, but invariably the door outside the home will be either one or two at best, not more than that. But inside the house there will be a lot of other doors and windows. If we talk about cybersecurity of that home, we will see that we will try to immediately, the basic human nature is like we try to bring the best and the most state of the art lock for our main door. Then comes the question whether we should put locks in our bedroom, in our drawing room, or let's say in all the other rooms, in our storeroom or this room, that room, how many rooms there might be in the home. Or we put a single lock at the main door and that's it. Then comes the other thing is how we protect our windows. Maybe we put in some context like we put a separate kind of a barrier in the form of either an iron grill, or let's say a form of another wooden pane like we use in European countries, where it's like multiple layers over the window to protect it. But have we really taken care of one aspect, that doing all this stuff, is my home secured? So there are multiple aspects to it. So what are the aspects? So I feel that my home is very secured, but at the same point of time, I might give a social media info. Hey, I am going for holiday in Europe. I am going for an enjoyment. That is one thing. Second, I might have totally forgot that the restroom in the home will have a ventilation fan, and that ventilation fan will have a sufficient square area through which a pilferage can happen or somebody can enter into my home. Although at the same point of time I have, let's say, used the best of the lot or the state of the art lock in my main doors. The third instant is that maybe we have used let's say the glass panes, as in the modern home what we do is aluminum channels and glass panes, which are like super rugged, they are unbreakable stuffs. But at the same point of time, we might not have taken care whether the locks that are built into the aluminum channels are proper or not. This is an environment, let's say an ISCS environment. Then what happens for the asset owner? Now, then again comes the question of identifying my assets. So, if I talk about identifying my assets, so how it is? Like somebody will be like, okay, let me put all my jewelries into the bank vault. Or somebody will be like, no, let me put all my valuable items in places which are least thought of. It's like trying to be more innovative in the thinking, so that the person who is actually trying to, I would say threat actor, who is actually trying to break into my home, is out thought of. Here one very interesting thing is that we always have to respect one thing: the hackers are day by day becoming very advanced, and they have a huge bonus on their hub. What is that? For them, if they are failing 499 times out of 500 times, nobody is going to call them a bad name, that you people have no efficiency at all. You people are total failure. Because the one time they are successful, it is easy to create a sufficient amount of name and fame for those hacking groups or the associations that are involved into it. We all know that nowadays everything is as a service: malware as a service, hacking as a service, this as a service, that as a service. So there are a lot of so-called AAS models available in the market. But we as cybersecurity engineers, we as cybersecurity solution asset owners, we always have to think of all those 500 permutation combinations and try to be successful. So thinking on that part, again coming back to the topic of 62443, what happens is I feel that as asset owner, my understanding of the concept, my understanding of the crux of the thing can be delved down into multiple pockets. What are those pockets? So those pockets I would say as Using components, I started with cyber physical system where the genesis itself was not thinking about cybersecurity. Now I am coming back to the concept. What is that concept is using modules which are secured by design. That is the primary step. So whatever things that we have not thought of earlier in the initial periods of the genesis of OT, we start by thinking and using products and components which are secured by design. Now, what is secured by design? So we will not delve into each and every detail of the topic, but definitely you can take references of 62434-1 and 4-2 to really understand what it is. Now, I will take a call on that part and try to bring on it. So let's say I have a lock in my home which is like using, say, 10 digit number, and that 10 digit number is known to me and to nobody else. So I am super confident that whosoever is the threat actor who is trying to break into my home will not be successful. But at the same point of time, what I've done, since I come back to the home at a different time than my better half or my child is in school, what I've done, I have put a cheat, or rather I have shared this 10 digit password with my child and with my better half. Or else, if I talk about a key, most people will put their key behind at the bottom of the flower pot. So what the thing is, concept is, I have used a secure by design because the lock is super secured by design. The same pretext if I talk about in a firewall. I have a very latest state of the art NGFW firewall with this feature, that feature, this certification, malware certification, this, that, and whatnot. Everything available on that. But at the same point of time, for ease of my job, I have written a rule, any, allow all. Now comes the new concept, that is not only doing secure by design, rather it is ensuring the security for the entire value chain. So it will be like secure by design, secure in commissioning, secure in implementation, securing in maintenance, and again securing the life cycle. So coming back to the CSMS, cybersecurity, you get my point, I presume so. Now for that, what happens is that when we talk about this thing, basically as asset owner, days have come now when to understand this management of CSMS management system, this management, we need to have separate things with us. What are those separate things? The first and the foremost thing is understanding the secure by operation. Buying products, COTS, commercial of the self items, which are secured by nature will not do. Have we checked who is the implementer? Who is the system integrator? Are they capable? How the solution is being vented upon? Do really people think about all the fundamental requirements mentioned in 3-3? Like for example, there is a fundamental requirement, restricted data flow out of the 7 FRs in the so-called the 3 series. Uh, is it really maintained during the design part? Okay, fine. When the design is done, now the product is shipping. And in between the shipping process, somebody has injected a malware into the product. When it reaches the asset owner's place, geographical place, is there any mechanism to check whatever has come out of the factory as a secured product, secured by design and secured by, so to say, this thing, implementation part of it, has it still, do it still continue to be secured? Fine. Then comes the other part. When I am actually implemented this thing in the site, what are the processes that I followed? Let's say site acceptance test, or let's say the factory acceptance test. Are they really mapping now? Do they be the same, or maybe the maintenance team has come up with a new requirement and it gets evolved? But do this evolution happen with the proper nominations, proper authorizations, and the proper responsibilities of all the stakeholders in the journey of this entire value chain. So these are the very basic things that needs to be said. For example, like in Schneider, what we do is that the person who is actually going to the site to do this implementation, or the person who is at the shop floor while preparing a secure by design product, they have a humongous amount of responsibilities and authorities with them. The CSL, we call them the CSL. The CSLs have the sole authority and responsibility of maintaining the security level of that entire chain. So if I have a process line and it is designed to be SL2, I mean, I am not going into the details of what are SL1, SL2, SL3, and SL4. But if we, let's say for the topic sake of understanding is that we have designed something for SL2, really is that SL2? Is the development life cycle is like minutely monitored, evaluated, and approved accordingly? Are the codes, the repository of the codes, or the software bill of materials which were used for this particular offer had undergone some due diligence and due care? Proper care has been taken. There is a complete BAPT of the topic. So these are the minor things that are being taken care that side. But when this solution is coming to the field, then comes our customer facing people. Now, in Schneider, what we do is that customer facing person should have a cyber badge. So if the asset owner asks that, hey, are you properly educated? Are you properly aware? Do you have like more customized training for the thing that you are doing? This person needs to take out the cyber badge and show that, yes, I am authorized and I am trained for this particular job. The same thing is the pain for this asset owner. Since I have a little bit of background of the asset owner, that is why I am insisting on these parts. So the moment we talk about 2-1, we will find certain requirements, but indirectly we will see that these requirements will ultimately map here and there with 3-2, 3-3, 4-1, 4-2. So for the asset owner, only going by the scruff of the neck and understanding 2-1 will not do. For example, the earlier method I was telling about, where I have taken a very state of the art lock for my home, but I forgot to make a protection for the washroom ventilation fan. My security of operation, security of design has gone for a toss. That is what the entire holistic approach should be. And for that, the next topic I will try to delve upon is the risk management part. So it's not a one-time job that you need to do the risk management. It is from the genesis of the topic. So whatever end user or the OEM or the vendor or the system integrator or the service provider are involved, actually the asset owner should be in a very comfortable position with all these entities. Because if I talk of a substance, I'm sorry, for a solution, definitely it will comprise of lot of civil, mechanical, electrical, electronic, and lot of stuffs. Even a single failure of any of these can create a catastrophe. The first formula, OSAS, operational health and safety. So what happens is that having a multifaceted approach or a multidisciplinary team to actually evaluate this thing is of utmost importance. And why that is so? Because if I don't write my cyber terms and conditions in a very strict and well defined manner, you know what happens. The ultimate end game is arbitration, discussions, deliberations with no positive or valued output of it. So understanding all these entities like my service provider, system integrator, OEMs or vendors, and then what is the ultimate solution that I am building upon? What are the contributions of each and every of them? I think that is the first picture that comes in 62443-2-1, where we understand what are the roles of each and every of these entities are. Now, once that is done, if I say that my forward and backward integration is being taken care, I have a very rugged philosophy for understanding my suppliers, understanding my service providers, and the solution they are providing at large. That is when I have actually matured as an asset owner to get the entire solution by the scruff of the neck and secure it. By what that I mean is that I should be in a position to do a very superficial gap analysis. We call it the initial gap analysis of the thing that is at hand. And once that is done, what we will find that immediately we will find that okay, there are these basic gaps. Like in the previous example I called upon, how as a owner of a home I understand that I need to put the lock on the main door, or I need to lock my bedroom also, or I need to lock my storeroom also. That is what is being defined indirectly by the identifications of the zones and conduits. Now I say I have understood what are the different pockets, what level of security is required for the different parts of these automations. I am very clear about it. Mind it, here there is a very basic trick to it. If I protect my zone for a certain security and I don't protect the two zones connectivity conduit, then there is a jeopardy into the thing. So I need to protect the conduit also. And that is how the network flow diagram or the restricted data flow is super important. It's not only relying on the OEMs or the system integrator or the service provider, but understanding the nature of the job, understanding the desired flow, understanding the desired packet tracing is super important for the asset owner. And while doing this, the final step obviously is going for a very detailed and thorough risk assessment. And if we are capable as asset owners, fine. If we are not, we engage some other party to do that for us. Pinpoint on those findings. Once these, let's say these are the risk findings. What I need to do is a continue. I always say that it's a live example. Maybe I had written a certain terms and conditions in one of my contract, RFP. Does that mean that this will continue for all the other offers throughout a certain period of time? No. Now, if I have understood my risk, I have assimilated my risk, and I find that there are certain things we need to be tweaked. I map these risk findings to my cyber TNCs, modulate my cyber TNCs accordingly, so that in the next RFP, this work ethics is being taken care of. And not only that, let's say whatever I am using, let's say I am using a Windows XP. My management is not allowing me to change the Windows XP because production cannot be hampered. The entire PNL is dependent on the production and it cannot be stopped under any circumstances. Does that mean that I will continue to accept risk as an asset owner? My risk acceptance or appetite for risk should be as minimum as possible as asset owner. Time has come when we need to be calling a spade a spade. It's not only about the production or it's not only about the PNL at the end of the day. It's a very balanced game. A CISO for as a CISO will never have a silver bullet to solve all the problems. But the main job of the CISO is to balance out the game between the management's requirement, business requirement, and the cybersecurity risk appetite. So that's the essence that needs to be understood. And I think 62443 has very beautifully put all those things together in the standard in the form of how the documentation should be, what are the aspects that you need to take care of, how actually you can get a better risk scenario and all those stuff. So I'm not going into the detail because I will lose on my time. I think I have only 10 minutes more with me. So coming back to the topic then. So once this is done, if I have an XP system, does that mean that it will solve, I still continue to have a larger risk appetite? No. Then I talk about 3-3. What 3-3 talks about is purely about putting countermeasures on a less hardened system. So even if I am using a Windows XP system, fine. What I will do next as an asset owner will think how to further convert those legacy systems into micro segments, isolating them, putting a lot of more further controls on the system, be it an access control, all different controls. I am not naming them individually because it's like super detail. I don't want to go into those stuffs. So once that is done, you find that today whatever your risk appetite was, tomorrow the risk appetite has subsided, and now it is even more difficult to reach those estimations. Why? Because you have put an additional thing. So it's very simple. On one factor, even if using a state of the art is not securing you, and at the other factor, even using a very old legacy system doesn't mean that you are unsecured. Both the things are possible, and there are solutions to both as governed by 3-2, 3-3. Okay. Now coming to the final part of it, of the CSMS process. So in the CSMS process, then what is left over is practically, if you think about, is I was talking about that we should be having an obsession about monitoring. Now there is a common concept where we say that okay, OT is isolated, we have critical information infrastructure, no touch situation. It's like we have a stigma on touching that OT system because it is a critical information infrastructure. No, let's change the environment. Let's evolve ourselves, and let's try for even larger monitoring of the system. We have lot of tools at hand. I will not name any of those tools, but we have lot of tools at hand who do real-time monitoring nowadays. And these real-time monitorings are super invasive monitorings without actually getting into your bandwidth of the network. So basically they are passive monitoring, but they are super invasive monitoring, going into the very depth and crux of the firmware, codes, these, that. And the added advantage to that one, the last but not the least final term, as far as the tricks are concerned, is threat intelligence, CTI, cyber threat intelligence. Definitely we need to bank upon on the cyber threat intelligence. So if I talk about a risk formula, what is the risk formula is like threat into vulnerability into this. I'm not completing because you know. So threat into vulnerability again is defined as likelihood. Now if we see basically how actually we are gauging whether it is a likelihood or not. Suppose I am working on a topic and asset owner where the present threat vis-a-vis the global scenario to India is very less, and we have, let's say, invested lot of money on that particular control. So is it the right way of going it? No. Then what comes into picture is identifying the optimizer model. So we will find if we draw a schema, and then we will find that as we are increasing the amount of investment on a certain automation for the security, there comes a tipping point, an optimizing point, where beyond that, if we invest a lot of money, a lot of commercials, the increase in security is very less. So that is the tipping point. That is the optimizer point where we should stop. And this comes with an educated gauge. And what it comes from is the threat intelligence. So basically speaking about all these stuffs, like as we are going ahead into the nitty-gritties of this thing, another important thing which I find is very important for asset owners is having proper documentation. We know that in today's world, in VUCA world, everything is in a jiffy. Everything happens like super fast. Today some person is having a responsibility X, tomorrow that person will have a responsibility Y. The person who came in to feel the responsibility X knows nothing about X. Does that mean that my security has gone for a toss? No. That is why I think as asset owners we should be very I would say like um, putting impetus from the management level itself on documentation. So if there is a proper documentation, if there is a proper kind of processes being followed and they are being evaluated and they are being audit trailed and documented, it's the system which is oiling on itself. Now the last part before I close is the incident response. For incident response, again and again, what I try to say is that when we touch a hot plate, it's not that immediately my human body asks, Hey, my two legs, hey, my one hand, hey, my brain, let's sit for an incident response meeting and then decide what the playbook will be, whether we should move the hand out of the plate or not, what are the pros and cons, what is the root cause analysis for getting super sensitive on a hot plate. No. What happens is a reflex. Immediately we take our hand off that hot plate. As asset owners, I think a time has come when we should be so thorough. We should be so thorough by tabletop exercises or by crisis simulations. We should be so thorough that tomorrow, if touchwood one real incident come at hand, the system should work like a very oiled machine in itself. People, individual people and processes should not get overwhelmed. And definitely for that, the last part of it is that whenever we are talking about incident response, it's like we should be having a very clear and thorough picture again from the CSMS is that what my risk appetite is, what are my risk registers, what are the priority contents of those risk registers, what are the priority component for this risk register, okay fine, and what are the playbooks, what are the flowcharts for that risk register, fine. So even if a novice person comes, he just opens the playbook and follows the flowchart. As simple as that. So it's a very oiled machine, no thinking. So that guy who is very new, he or she is very new to this environment, doesn't need to think extra. Okay, I got a malware into my system and my system is protecting a turbine. What to do? No, we have a flowchart at hand, and even being a new person, that person can work through the flowchart. Outcome being given to a subject matter expert. We all talk about analyst level 1, analyst level 2, SOC report 1, SOC report 2, these, that, etc., etc. But what is the practical implementation in an asset owner's environment is that now there should be a multi-faceted, multi-department system or a group to whom the output of the flowchart is like a super input, and immediately they will churn this up and come out with the probable way of containment, probable way of mitigation, or probable way of like completely eradicating the problem, how to recover quickly. And saying so, one thing, there is no glitch in one point is that that if somebody today says that I am super impregnable, it's absolutely fault. People are in their dreamland, in the la la land. No, it's more of like at any point of time I can get compromised. I should be a super oil machine so that I come back to business at the earliest. And that's all the maturity term tantamounts to. So how quickly we come back, and if we see into the 62443 standards, and if we understand those things more, we will find each and every lines and the SRs, BRs, or the FRs, we will find what it actually turmoils to. So it also talks about documentation, it talks about incident management and its remediation, it talks about incident management's remediation documentation, it talks about ensuring that your committee has multiple people into it. And last but not the least is the people process technology, with which I will end my topic. Definitely, if you say to as an asset owner to your finance guy, hey, do you know running this 445 port is very vulnerable, I think we should stop. I can guarantee you the finance person will laugh at your back and you become a stand-up comedian. This is not the way of doing a cyber training to the people of the organization, more so in the asset owner's perspective, because the asset owners has a lot of things at hand. There are multiple departments. So then what happens? The topic is like customized training. So if I am talking with HR, make them believe, okay, what is PII? What is the essence of that one? How actually my automation is involving in you? Suppose I am using an active directory in my automation environment where my shift in charge will log in, and if he is in that payroll for that day, then only he gets an access to that one. You see the connect. I have not talked about IT/OT convergence, but actually the connect is there. The moment I have converted my automation environment with an active directory, indirectly I have actually involved lot of other vulnerabilities which were solely dedicated to the IT. Then I need to understand my HR guy. Okay, this is that. Now you need to do your HR role Excel sheet in this way so that it's secured. And in return, the connectivity, the conduit of that HR database, employee database to my Active Directory is also secured. Similarly for the finance team. So if by any chance my automation is connected to SAP or something else, I need to make that channel secured. And in this process, I have not talked about lot of generic terms like defense in depth and all these terms. I hope I took the liberty of thinking that people are aware of all those stuff. So I tried to make it like more colloquial and touch upon much more important topics like it's not the level 0, but it's like level 1.5 or 2, a little bit on the thing, so that these are the crux points as an asset owner you should be taking care of. And last but not the least, in the people process technology, as an asset owner, always think of a solution. In Schneider, we believe it religiously that people are not the weakest link of the chain for a people process technology, but rather they are the strongest link in the chain. How? Because it is the people who actually design those processes, who actually are sitting in the BCP, who actually are doing the brainstorming and the due diligence, who actually are deciding on the risk appetite. Maybe they are doing based on certain framework, fine, but it's the people. And again, it is the people who are adopting the latest technology by understanding, okay, this technology is apt and an optimized solution for my requirement. So people is very important. And now, if I am able to make my people sufficiently aware and intelligent, then what happens tomorrow, like a process engineer, when they take a round trip of a plant or an environment, say, hey, I saw steam leaking, there is some abnormal, immediately stop that process. The same thing for cyber. The person who is very well aware and educated on cyber and has a customized training will call you up and say, hey, I see some abnormality in the system. You immediately take care of it. By that way, I don't only have a passive or this or that kind of a tool to understand an anomaly in the system or the consumption in the system, but I also have my people sensor now. This is an additional sensor which has been inbuilt into the system who reports cyber to me. With that, I would like to close. Hope I was able to give a certain kind of a picture. Thank you.
Thank you, Somnath. Really wonderful and really, inspiring of you to close it with those remarks, right? People are not the weakest link, but instead, when you shift the perspective and focus on looking at people as, in fact, the strongest chain, you're changing the entire dynamic. That is really inspiring and also really insightful of you and really thoughtful that you could cover the entire value chain of the OT security, especially the way the CSMS is structured in 62443 and how you go about implementing it. I think really, I mean, no one else could have done better justice to this. Thank you for your time, really. Thank you for being here
Thank
on a
you so
Saturday
much.
evening.
Thank you so much
Yes.
for such wonderful words. Thank you. Really appreciate.
No worries. All right. We'll go over a quick small announcements and then we'll open up the session for Q&A so that people can interact. We'll give maybe about 5 to 6 minutes and then we can wrap up the session. So a few announcements are basically that this will not be the last session for ISAB. We have two more upcoming sessions, one in January and in February we are planning of a physical OT security conference happening in Bangalore. The date and the venue will be released, so stick to your emails. The announcements will soon be rolling out. That is the first announcement. Second is, of course, I'd like to thank Bharati Bharadwaj and Bharataraj and the rest of the ISAB team for actually making this very successful. And I'm sure most of them really enjoyed this session, right? Thank you so much for that. And what we'll do now is we'll open up the session for Q&A. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Uh, Somnath can address them, or anyone else in the chat can address. We have one question, someone who's raised their hands up. You can unmute yourself and you can ask that question.
Hello, my name is Sultana. Thank you for touching on secure by design. Interestingly, you mentioned people are important. What's going through my head is ex you mentioned thinking about security throughout the project life cycle. Could you suggest? So I'm thinking this is what you're talking about is embedding security in a company's culture. So everyone is thinking about it and questioning, is that right? And how would you give a tip how to promote that, encourage that? It wouldn't happen overnight, I know that. Could you provide some best examples from your experience?
I think I don't know if I will be able to answer you correctly, but I think whatever experience I had is first, if we have silos in our organizations where the operation technology team works separately from the information technology team, or let's say the so-called automation people works in a separate environment from the IT people, that needs to be stopped. So it needs to be really like friendly intermingling culture between the IT and the OT departments, regularly interacting with each other, because what I found in my little experience is that every other day, because of the geopolitical environment, we come up with surprises of new regulations, new frameworks, new requirements, and they really require a lot of deep diving into those topics, where sitting together with your multi-departmental environment, particularly IT and OT people sitting, because an OT person might be very super expert in Modbus, and the IT person will think, okay, for me, stopping everything on a firewall is of utmost importance. But finding a middle path is super, super important. And that is how, if instead of a single department, both the department comes to the management with a single cause, it becomes easy for that cause to get approved and implemented. The second point is definitely having a holistic approach towards any kind of a security incident. So it's not only about like let's say talking about any new RFP in singularity only with the ISIS persons, rather involve procurement team. In that way, the procurement team will also start having awareness about cybersecurity, its requirements, why this thing is done, why a separate component or a tool is being procured, although it is kind of like a cost incursive, additional cost incursive to the business. The same thing holds true for the HR also, because HR can definitely, in that way, try and give kind of like remuneration models and programs for people who are working fine with security as a primary concept to them. And last but not the least, your incident response team should be like a mix and match of all these people, because it's not only IT, it's not only OT, but it's a mix of all these people that actually will help in analyzing the risk. For example, if I take of a real-time scenario, there is a scene, let's say in an automation environment, where the chance of fire is very high, but the chance of that particular plant getting hacked is super low. Now, if I am implementing a cybersecurity solution for automation system, and I say that this is a single solution, like a silver bullet for all the automation systems available in that plant, that's the wrong thing to go about. Because now I know my probability is less, my likelihood is super low, and then accordingly, if I do the heat mapping in the risk register, I get a better approach. So it's all about like having, again, say customized training to all the people, having multifunctional teams. I think that's the beauty of it. And definitely I would try to thrust upon the point that OT and the IT departments should join hand and work together. That's the very key aspect.
That's brilliant. Thank you. That is really good. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Somnath. I think maybe one more question and we can wrap it up for the day. There is, hi, I'm a student and beginner in OT security from India. I want to know about some books related to ISA, IEC 62443, the certification and the documents are expensive. So maybe I can give a second half part of the explanation, but if you have any suggested reading material, that would be really good.
There are a lot of things, but what I would suggest is that there are n number of avenues. By the way, if you are a little, I mean, today everybody uses social media, so there are a lot of things in the social media definitely. But the right way of going about with this one, I think, is although you are a student, but the approach towards making a mark really on the cybersecurity is having a wholeheartedness effort. Means the effort is of pinnacle importance, nothing less than that. And the moment you are having that effort to learn that thing properly, it also comes with a lot of experience. So mugging up the books or mugging up the pointers, mugging up slides will not help. Understanding of the concept will help. So before going to 62443, a well-oriented understanding of what industrial control system is, what OT is, how they work, why they work that way, that is of importance. So start, and I think in India there are a lot of courses by NPTEL where you can start learning this thing. There are wonderful courses by CISA also, which are free, like 210 series, 200 series, 300 series, and 400 series. You can go through them, have an holistic idea first, and then try to deep dive into 62443.
Thank you, Somnath, for that really well answered. I think the second part of that answer is also while you have these courses and things, uh, they don't necessarily get you the 62443 certification, right? So only ISA is the entity providing these certifications and also the training material along with it. So there are some cases where in countries like India and particular sections in India where these costs are subsidized. So maybe you can reach out to the chapter admin and they will be able to help you out to get this subsidized rate of training material and even the certifications themselves. So with that, I wish everyone happy holidays.